No.
Hi there.
Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. How are you?
Very well. And let me know when you're ready to start the conversation. We're going to talk about 1 hour and 10 minutes, or 45 minutes.
Okay. Yep. I'm ready to go now. Using satellite imagery.
Okay. Yeah. Dear Michael, thank you for your time. And we recently published an article about the discovery of 3 Roman military camps in southeastern Jordan. That discovery was announced in 2022, but it was confirmed in late April, early May this year by not only the Jordan Times, but a big media outlets like BBC. Can you tell us more about the discovery of your archaeological team from the Oxford University?
Yes, of course. So we discovered these camps using satellite imagery on systems such as Google Earth. We'd been conducting a systematic survey across a much wider area. And in fact, this part of Southeast Jordan was largely considered to be quite empty in terms of archaeological sites. So it was something of a surprise to see these sites, which are made up of kind of low walls in the shape of a kind of rectangle or playing card shape with rounded corners and opposing entrances. They're very typical of the Roman army. You will find very similar structures in other parts of the Middle East, but also in parts of Europe. You know, there was a very clear design form. In terms of dating, no, we can't be precise based just on the form. The Roman army built these over quite a long period of time, but it certainly fits within our hypothesis that maybe they were built in the early 2nd century CE after the Roman annexation of the Nabatean kingdom.
Yeah, we are talking about the territory that once belonged to the Nabatean kingdom that was annexed in 106 AD. Do we have primary sources that would indicate that the Roman military, was planning to conduct some kind of military incursions to northwestern parts of Saudi Arabia, modern Saudi Arabia, of course?
No, on the contrary, the surviving Roman sources would suggest that, in fact, if anything, it was a peaceful transfer of power. There's no mention of any military campaigns, which is again feeds into this being such a surprise discovery. What is interesting and has been brought to my attention since we published the paper is there have been some inscriptions found in Damat al-Jandal in Saudi Arabia, which is looks like it was the target of these camps based on the line that they were taking through southeast Jordan. And those inscriptions appeared to be in Nabatean script, so written by individuals who are ethnically Nabatean, but they are describing themselves as cavalrymen serving in the Roman army. And these are also from the early 2nd century. The paper that's published them has suggested maybe 10 years later, so around 115 or 116 CE. And sorry, you have to excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. Let me.
No problem.
Again.
No, don't. This is not a problem. I have cats, you have dogs. Many times my cats come to me on this table because they hear human voices and they get more excited and more.
Yeah, well, hopefully my dog won't see your cat on your screen.
Hopefully he's not going to destroy your PC when he sees my cats.
So these inscriptions that have been found at Damat al-Jandal suggest that you have Nabatean cavalrymen working for the Roman army, possibly within a decade of our suggested campaign, which would suggest that maybe if there was a campaign, it didn't lead to any fighting. It might be what we would term gunboat diplomacy. You know, the Roman army appears and quickly power is transferred. And certainly 10 years later, it seems that the region was kind of peacefully under Roman control.
And these forces became regularly Roman forces. They're not auxiliary army or auxiliary forces.
Well, as cavalrymen, they would in the Roman description of things, they would be auxiliary forces.
Yeah.
But still, it shows that Rome's power had reached that region at least into the 3rd century, and after that we see the Roman Empire slowly retracting.
Of course, this was the part of the aerial archaeology in Jordan, a project that is run by the Endangered Archaeology in the Middle East and North Africa, which is, of course, projects affiliated with the University of Oxford. And in the meantime, it became a joint venture of universities of Durham and Leicester, if I'm not mistaken. How long have you been working with aerial archaeology in Jordan projects?
Yeah, so the aerial archaeology in Jordan project is actually slightly separate. It's been run since the late 1990s by Robert Bewley, who was until recently the director of the EAMENA project. So there's some overlap, but it is a separate project, and that's in conjunction with Professor David Kennedy from the University of Western Australia. And so they've been flying over Jordan and both recording known sites, but also identifying new sites for the last 25 years, and a really amazing project with a really fantastic archive of photographs. And we were very fortunate that after we identified these camps on satellite imagery, that their flying season was the next month in November, and they were able to change their schedule to photograph the western and central camps. And as you'll have seen, some really fantastic images of those camps, and really gives an impression of what a barren environment it is.
Are you planning to excavate these 3 military sites?
I think at present, we will try and work with our partners in Jordan that they could perhaps visit and inspect the sites. I think from our knowledge of Roman temporary camps, there isn't a great deal of value in trying to excavate them because they were occupied for such a short period of time, and because you had soldiers probably traveling very light, and who kept careful control of all their equipment. The likelihood is they won't have left anything, certainly on purpose. So the chances, if you excavated, you would probably simply you wouldn't find any evidence that would suggest the exact date that the fort was built, or any other information. And obviously, being such a difficult environment to work in, it would also be a very expensive expedition. So I think the first thing would be to get some archaeologists out there on the ground to inspect the sites, to make sure there's nothing that we've missed from looking at aerial photographs, and then build from there. It might be, in terms of this wider narrative, it might be more investigations at Dumat al-Jandal. That would be very interesting. But also in future investigations around Bayir, which is possibly the site of either a Roman station or maybe another camp. Although it's only really known from a later Umayyad fortress that was on the site, and unfortunately was demolished in the 1930s, but the foundations of that site are still there. So excavations there on a potentially more permanently occupied site may give us some more interesting data.
Do we have evidence about the occupation of Al-Jandal in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, I believe a French team has been working with Saudi archaeologists over the last decade, and it's a site that has been occupied over a long period of time. But these Nabatean inscriptions that have been found recently, well, published recently, certainly, well, they don't prove our theory. They certainly kind of make it clear that there are cavalrymen stationed, and we suggest these camps must have been used by cavalry because they're too far apart to be to have troops on foot to march within a day, and it also suggests that there is clear Roman occupation in that region very soon after 106 AD. But like all sites, it's a very large site, Mount al-Janal, and very spread. So there's certainly more scope for future investigations, and perhaps maybe the discovery of these camps might encourage archaeologists already working in that region to kind of to undertake further work and more investigations.
Have you worked before in Jordan, in the area, in the southern Levant, as an archaeologist?
I've been working. Yeah, I've been working as part of the Endangered Archaeology project for quite a long time now, for over 8 years. So yeah, we've worked, but mainly in terms of training work with the Department of Antiquities in Jordan, in terms of trying to encourage the use of satellite imagery as like a low-cost method for survey and monitoring. And our project has many connections, and obviously through our link to the Aerial Archaeology in Jordan project, also known as APAMI, we kind of historically have a relationship going back into the 1990s.
Can you say more about the endangered archaeology in the Middle East and North Africa? Because we are witnesses that the heritage of the Middle East is under threat of vandalism, looting, industrial expansion, urban expansion, agricultural expansion. How different local stakeholders and international policymakers can protect archaeological sites and the heritage in general?
So our project is working to provide as much documentation as possible on an accessible database, and we're also working with the Department of Antiquities in Jordan to further develop their own system, which is currently known as Mega Jordan, but we're looking to develop that to a more up-to-date system. And so what we're doing, we can't stop all these individual damage episodes, but by providing a large data set on a system that allows you to explore where the biggest problems are, and modeling where issues may be in the future, we can use our, unfortunately archaeology has very limited resources, so we can perhaps use our resources where they'll be most effective. I mean, in terms of those more general issues, which are the numerically the bigger issues for many heritage sites, so agriculture and urban expansion. I mean, that's much the same as anywhere else in the world. And so, in the UK, we have to make decisions about which archaeological sites we have to let be destroyed by development, and which not, because people need to eat, people need to live. So we can't stop those processes, but we can use the documentation that we're creating to at least make kind of evidence-based decisions, and also to then approach funding bodies to help. We have an evidence base to ask for funding to support protection and preservation when we can. Unfortunately, we will never be able to stop everything.
Are you still affiliated with CBRL or CBRL Amman? This is now the new name of the institute, CBRL Amman Institute. They used to be British Institute before they moved to Jebel Web there. And how? Yes.
So yeah, we have a number of connections. The current director of our project is Bill Finlayson, who used to be based at the CBRL, and our former director, Robert Bewley, is now affiliated at the UK end of CBRL. So we have many connections, and during all of our campaign, our training campaigns, we've regularly visited the CBRL offices.
Are you planning to organize a new campaign in this year?
Yes, we recently had some more funding from the British Council via the British government, and so there'll be a new training scheme in the coming months, working with both Jordanian and some Palestinian archaeologists who are able to come across and take part in that training. So yeah, our work continues, and we support where we can.
In a few words, what's the methodology of the endangered archaeology in the Middle East project?
So the primary methodology in terms of our survey work is that use of open source satellite imagery, because for us it's the most cost effective way we can work, and the way that we, here we are based in the UK, that we can add most value in terms of the survey work that we do, but also the training that we can try and provide. Our project will have a limited lifespan, but after that, as long as we can pass on as many of those skills as possible to colleagues in Jordan and elsewhere in the region, these are all positives. So it probably comes across as not particularly sophisticated. We are taking areas on a satellite image, and then we are systematically looking through them to identify both sites that are already known on the ground, and like in the case of these camps, we are still discovering many new sites that weren't previously known. Now, in many of those cases, we can't develop an interesting story or narrative, but here in this case in Southeast Jordan, because we have these camps, and because they're in, their form is typical of Roman, and the way that they are spaced apart and moving in a straight line, we're able to develop a much more interesting narrative and place it in historical context. And as you said at the beginning, there's been a lot of media interest in this, far more than we expected. We hoped a few people would notice, but newspapers around the world are reading about these sites, and we're even getting documentary makers and tourist companies who want to know more. This is a region that typically on a holiday to Jordan you might not visit. So I think that's a really a real positive, that we're drawing attention to an area that perhaps hasn't had that much attention in the past.
Yeah, because we're talking about exactly 44 kilometers between each of these military camps.
Yeah, amazing. Particularly if you think they were on campaign. I mean, yeah, it's not absolutely precise, but the fact that they were able to space them out, whilst riding and still get them in a straight line. And I mean, they were possibly following an existing very minor caravan road, because the sensible way to travel from Saudi Arabia to Jordan would be to go to Azraq, up to Wadi Serhan, where you have water and other things. So but yeah, a really remarkable I guess logistical effort on the part of the Romans, and because that region, the reason that they haven't been identified before and they survive in such good condition is because it is a region that people do not inhabit compared to other parts of the desert in that region. It really is a very empty area.
Regarding the aerial archaeology in Jordan, what are plans related to this project?
So last November they were able to visit the western and the central camps because they only found out at such short notice. They were unable to have permission to visit the most easterly camp because it is so close to the Saudi Arabia border. So the hope is that they will be able to photograph that site. That would be really interesting because of all the satellite images, they are the lowest quality in that area. So what we can say about the site from satellite images is very limited at the moment. So we could gain a lot more if they're able to photograph that site. And there still remains the potential that there may be other features in that landscape that we can't see from a satellite image, which it's high resolution, but not as high as if you were flying over in a helicopter. So there is also the potential that they may be able to identify more features on the ground, which would be really interesting. So I think it will be next October or November. They'll hopefully be back out with the Royal Jordanian Air Force, who are really helpful and work with the project. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of that and have a better look at that eastern camp.
Also, you've been involved with the Brazilian highlands and work in South America. You've been working as an archaeologist in the UK, in the Middle East, or let's say MENA region, and in Brazil. Maybe we can also discuss that.
Well, that partly reflects. I am, in terms of archaeologist, what you would call a landscape archaeologist. So I look at areas at a large scale, and that means my work is quite adaptable. I'm not kind of focused on a particular culture or a particular period of time. So my work in terms of mapping, not only using satellite imagery and aerial imagery, but also topographical mapping on the ground, means that I've been quite adaptable. And just like any career, you don't always get the option of where you want to go. It's a case of where positions become available. So yeah, certainly all my early work was in the UK and a bit in Europe. And then, yeah, I had a very interesting time working in the South Brazilian highlands. Interestingly, they have very similar in the kind of pre-Columbian monumental features that they have there, consisting of a central circular mound surrounded by a circular bank. These are, on a map, these are almost identical to the Bronze Age tombs that we call ring tombs that we get in Northern Arabia. I mean, there's no real connection, but it's interesting that you see that repetition of form even across the Atlantic between the two areas. So yeah, that is part of the reason my career has taken me to so many locations. So I am what would sometimes be termed an expert generalist. I'm not the expert on a particular part of Levantine archaeology. I'm much more of a generalist, which sometimes allows you to have kind of new perspectives on things, but other times it means you don't have that detailed knowledge. And like with this project here, I've worked with other archaeologists who have a much more detailed knowledge of the region to help kind of push our research forward.
What was the feedback from the academic community when you announced this discovery in southeastern Jordan?
It's been overwhelmingly positive. The paper has been very widely read, in part helped by all the media interest, and that's also really interesting that outside of the world of universities, I've been kind of contacted by so many people, and so many people have read about this work. People seem really excited about it. I'm getting kind of messages from people who've started looking at Google Earth themselves, and they wonder if they've found another camp. They haven't yet, but it's always interesting to have that kind of public engagement, and for people to feel confident that they can have a go themselves. Because we're using tools like Google Earth, there's nothing to stop anybody, at home in Amman or anywhere else, from also kind of developing their own work and building out, because there's only so much work that we can do. We are a relatively small research team, so yeah, there's certainly been no suggestion that our interpretation is incorrect so far. Certainly in terms of these being Roman campaign camps, and we're very clear in our paper that we're making a hypothesis that maybe it's the Nabatean annexation. That's the context. We're clear that we're suggesting this, and this is a theory for other archaeologists to challenge in the future if they want. But it's been yeah, a really positive feedback so far.
How many people are in your team? You mentioned that you have a small team. Do you have some local members who are taking part in aerial archaeology, like Firas Bakain from the CBRL? I know that he's very passionate about going to different parts of Jordan and taking photos from the chopper. So how many of you are involved in aerial archaeology?
Well, none of our projects are directly involved with the aerial archaeology projects. We're all using satellite imagery, so desk-based. So in our Oxford office, we have kind of 5 members of staff, but only I suppose 2 of us are really involved in the survey work, and we cover much of the southern Levant and the Arabian Peninsula and parts of western Iran. Then we have our colleagues in Durham. They cover the northern Levant and Iraq and eastern Iran. And there are 4 members of staff there, but again, only 2 of them working on survey. And similarly, we have a team in Leicester that's currently made up of, I think, 4 members of staff. Again, only 2 of them actively involved in survey, and they cover much of North Africa. On top of that, as part of our British Council training work, we have a few more members of staff, but they're part of the team who are actually providing this training work. So again, they're not involved in the research side of the project. So ultimately, I guess that's my long way of saying there's about 6 of us involved in
Yeah, it's a small team, but very effective team. That's my conclusion. You don't have to have 50 people involved, where 5 people will work and 20 people will do nothing. But you're very effective.
Yeah.
As a team of 6.
And with every training program we have as well, every Jordanian or Palestinian archaeologist who's able to take on some of our work, or in Iraq, it builds. And so yeah, hopefully there will be a slow kind of tidal wave of more archaeologists doing this kind of work.
Do you want to add something for the end?
I'd like to thank you for interviewing me and taking interest in our work. And I hope that people will kind of follow our project. We'll be having more research papers coming out in the future, and we're always having parts of our training program will be on our social media. So please, any of your listeners, please do follow us, and yeah, we hope to provide more exciting research in the future.
Hopefully, we're going to meet in person when you come back to Jordan in October 2023. It will be a pleasure to meet you in person. In the meantime, I'm going to follow up on your work. I know Bob for 8-9 years. He's been very active. Also, I dealt with Professor Kennedy, and it's a continuation of a pre-war British aerial archaeology and aerial survey in this region. It all started with the military survey of Levant and Iraq during a pre-war period. I'll continue to covering your projects, and it was very, very nice. It was pleasurable to write about your research, and I'm going to talk with you about your work in the UK next time, maybe in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, because I'm not limited to the Middle East or Southern Levant. This is the
my
difference
pleasure.
between the paper and the podcast. On the podcast, I can talk about Brazil and your surveys in the UK. I wish you all the best, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you. You too.
All the best.
Okay. Goodbye for now.
Bye bye.